Okay, well, welcome. My promise to you as a fellow teacher is my promise is that you will leave today with at least a couple tips and new techniques that you can use, because there's nothing worse, at least I think, than spending a whole several hours in a seminar, leaving, and the best thing I can say is, didn't she look nice? So I want you to have something to use by the end of my session, okay? I'm going to start with what I always start with, the agenda. I'm sure you guys are putting them up on your boards. I do all the time. I know what's going on in the day, so my students should know, whoops, what's going on in the day too. Today's agenda has two parts. First part is mine. It's lessons learned. I'm going to share some of those techniques and tips that I use on a day-to-day basis. The second part is a call to action, and that's your turn. What you're going to be allowed to do, what you're going to have time to do, is to look up some of the websites that I talk about, and or take some of the tips, techniques that I suggest, and take a lesson plan that you're planning on doing and tweak it, or even go so far as to come up with your own techniques and add those as well. Every website, everything that I talk about, I have on a handout. You will get that at the end. I don't like people to read along with me, so you'll get it at the end, okay? So don't feel free to take notes. Don't feel like you have to take notes, but you can. All right? So we'll begin. I called it teaching to all students. They're calling it all kinds of things, differentiation, individualization, whatever you want to call it. This is what I'm talking about. And to me, it all begins with empowering your students. Gone are the days when the students sit placidly with their little hands folded, hanging on your every word. I did that for Sister Michael Jude at St. Michael's, but I haven't seen students do that in years. And nowadays we have students that have a lot of names and letters behind them. And and my classes are no exception. One of my classes, I have over 50% of my students have IEPs. My students have ADD, OCD, high anxiety, ADHD. You name it, they've got it. Asperger's, we run that broad spectrum. And when I get them as 6th graders and 7th and 8th graders, often they've been already beaten down. They're frustrated. They don't necessarily like school anymore. And so my job is to empower them. And by that I mean I need to find out what they're good at and reach them through that. Now, what I'm not saying is change your curriculum. I promise you, whatever I do, I stick with my curriculum. There is no watering down of my curriculum. I don't look at my kids and say, because I've got these kids with all these IEPs, or because I've got these kids with low academics, I can't teach everything I'm supposed to teach. I still teach everything I'm supposed to teach. I still teach everything I want to teach, but I just attack it differently. What I do, and I'm going to repeat that again and again, is I find and I use my students' strengths. One of the things that I have noticed over the years is that a lot of our kids are really focused in on screen time. So I see that as a strength. So I'm going to talk to you about how I use screen time. Screen time I use 3 different ways. First way is PowerPoints. I love PowerPoints. I've never made one personally. This is like as close as I come. But I love PowerPoints. I've had my students make PowerPoints. I don't know whether you have a computer teacher or whether you have a computer lab, but my school has one. And one of the things that we do with that is I partner with the computer teacher a lot. Our computer teacher, just like every computer teacher, has all these things that she needs to teach. She needs them to learn how to do a PowerPoint. She needs to learn how to do slides and blah, blah, blah. So she's always looking for ways to teach that. So a couple years ago, I said to her, could I have you teach them how to do a PowerPoint, but use the stuff that I'm teaching? So my sixth graders, during their computer time, didn't take any of my class time, which was lovely. They made PowerPoints on the 8 parts of speech. They also included a self-correcting quiz at the end. They had and they added noises and everything. It would clap if you got it right. One had a little trumpet going off. It was very nice, very well done. What was I doing? Nothing. When they were all done with this, they shared it with the 5th grade students who were struggling with with the 8 parts of speech. So they learned how, so it was a great thing. It was a beautiful thing, actually. And all I did with the student made is at some point during my free period, I would go in to the computer lab and I would check out their PowerPoints to make sure that they really were saying a verb is, you know, an action or a state of being. So I did look them all over, but I didn't have to teach them how to do the PowerPoints. I didn't execute them. I didn't take the time to use those. It was all student made. So it was all showing my students that you're in charge. The other type of screen time I use, and I use this a lot, is Pete's PowerPoint. Are any of you familiar with Pete's PowerPoint? You want to write this one down. This is a gem. This is an absolute gem. Pete's PowerPoint. It's a free website, and it has literally hundreds of beautifully made PowerPoints made specifically for you and me. Pete's PowerPoint is free, and Pete's PowerPoint is very well done. You go into it, you pick the subject you're interested in, geography, mathematics, ABCs. It goes all the way down to PowerPoints for preschool and kindergarten, English, writing, whatever it is that you're interested in. And then it will give you and then it breaks it down into specifics. If you go to writing, what kind of writing are you interested in? Are you interested in persuasive, fairy tales, the 5 parts of a story? What is it that you're looking for? Hit those, and it shows you all these beautifully made PowerPoints. And these are stellar. Mine is kind of sad looking. Theirs is stellar. It comes in color. It comes with moving characters, and it comes usually with much noise and fanfare. The kids love it. I mean, love it. I used Pete's PowerPoint twice this past week. Once, I used it to show one on prepositions. Remember, English teacher. And another time, I used one to show the 5 plot points of a story. And it's got this little traveler that literally climbs up a mountain for the rising action, gets there, climbs down the mountain for the falling action, and the kids actually, and I'm not lying, actually asked to see these again. Do we have time to watch that again? They never ask, could we read page 47 again? But they'll ask to see the PowerPoint again. So PowerPoints, Pete's PowerPoints, you will love that. Another type of screen time I use is games. They're doing them at home, so why not let them do them at school? Only tweak it. You choose the games. Here's 2 of my very favorite game sites. Again, if you don't know these, you will be praising my name later, and I'm not joking. One is called Quia, Q-U-I-A. Quia literally has thousands of teacher-made games. Yes, you too could make a game and add it to Quia, but I've never done it, because if they've already done it for me, why should I? Quia games come in a wide variety of subjects. I have a senior. My son is 18 years old, and he is a senior in high school. He used Quia to help him get through Spanish in high school because they have all these Spanish games that helped him work with his flashcards. There's chemistry. There's everything throughout high school, but it also goes down to elementary school. everything you can think of, from geography to music, it's all in there. Quia games run the gamut. You could play hangman. They do flashcards. They do concentration, which is you find the partner, find the match, and you flip it over. They do those. And they do something called rags to riches, which is really who wants to be a millionaire. It's got the money on the one side, and the money goes up. It's got the little hints. It's got the 4 questions. The kids go gaga over this. They love to play that. And their other favorite one is Jeopardy. And my boys like Battleship. You can play with a partner, or you can play against the computer. All these games are educational. Now, how do I use it? I use it 2 different ways. Couple times a month, I take each and every one of my classes to the computer lab, and I partner them up on a computer. I learned very early on that they didn't like being separated. They could. We're fortunate enough that we have enough computers for everybody to have one, but they want to play the partner games. So I let them sit together in partners, and I tell them, you must go to Quia. They type in Quia, and I tell them, these are the games I want you to play. So I do the background. That does take a little time, but I do the background. I decide which games I want them to play, and I say, these are the games you're going to play. And they're happy campers for a half hour or the 40 minutes or however long I let them do it. If on occasion we go in there and a lot of the servers are down, a lot of the computers are down, which happens like lots, I have had as many as 4 and 5 on one computer. And I'm talking 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And they do really, really, really well because they are focused on the game. They will team up. Oh, I'll take adverbs for 400. They're all about the game. Now, if I can't get into the computer lab, it's not working, or I really want to show them how to play a game, what I do is I will literally pop it up on my laptop and do just what I'm doing here. I show it to my kids, and we play as a class. I don't do it for a tremendous amount of time, but if I want to show them something, maybe 10 minutes of a quick game of Jeopardy, or Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, or I might use simply one of the self-correcting quizzes. Quia is a godsend. I love Quia. I think you'll love Quia too. And your students certainly will. Again, I used it this week. I was teaching the ever-popular transitive versus intransitive verbs. And all I did was I introduced it with about 5 minutes of notes, 5 minutes of lecture, and then I said, we're going to go practice it. I found this nifty game in Quia on transitive versus intransitive verbs, and for those of you that don't know, that's okay. Anyway, they played Quia for a half hour, and all I do during that time is I simply walk around. I'm just floating around in the computer room. And the joy for me is during that half hour to hear, I get it, I get it, I got it. They're using their book, they're using their notes, they're talking to each other, and they're not talking about Jersey Shores. They're talking about transitive versus intransitive. And they walk away really getting it. And I've been teaching transitive versus intransitives for years. This is the best it's ever been because over these past years, I have learned that if we go to Quia on a regular basis for them to practice, they do really well. I just gave a huge test to my 8th graders yesterday, and one of my students, he suffers from high anxiety, God bless his little heart, and he came up to me right after the class and he says, I'm not sure I get those infinitives, and I'm really worried. So we spent some time, Nathaniel and I, and on Kuya, because I happen to know a couple extra little games and a couple extra little quizzes that he could go to. And I said, practice these. He and I worked together as well. I mean, I gave him extra time during my lunchtime. That was a choice I gave him, that I said I'm available. And he took me up on that. He came up to me before the test, and he said, Mrs. Kisner, I played, this game and this game. And he said, I so have it. He said, I'm so comfortable, and I know I'm going to do well on the test. And he did. I graded his right away because he couldn't go home with a 3-day weekend. That's like too much anxiety. You know those kids that just can't wait. And I needed to be able to say, you got 100. You did awesome. You did a great job. But he's the one that came up to me and said, thank you for that. So, Kuya. The other one is BBC SkillsWise. I came across this 2-3 years ago. Love this. This is much smaller. This is strictly your reading, writing, and arithmetic with a British accent, I might say. So they do spell things, as we would say, wrong in a couple areas. But it's very nice. They do have a lot of little short clips, 1 to 4 minute videos where you can watch something on what is a noun. How do we multiply? Content clues. How do we use content clues? Again, it's just reading, writing, and arithmetic. They love it. I love it. It's incredibly well made because it's done by the BBC broadcasting system. So BBC SkillsWise. There's a lot more out there. One that I would suggest that you look up is called Big Dog, and I don't have this in my notes, Big Dog Bites, BYTES. If you want to look it up, you can simply type in chompchomp.com. And it's all, for those of you that teach reading or English or writing of any kind, that is a really cool site that has wonderful games, lovely tutorials, lots of quizzes. I use that a lot as well.
Is everybody comfortable, or do you want the heat on? That's what I thought.
Heat, okay.
I don't think you
The final one is PBS. If you have a local PBS, do you? Yes? Yes? No? Okay. Okay. If you have a local PBS, I highly recommend that you use them. About 5 years ago, when I was strictly a 6th grade teacher, I was informed by my principal in May that I would be teaching science in August. Hello, English teacher. And I said, I'm teaching science. They said, yes. You get to do the volcanoes and the rocks and all that really cool stuff. So I said, okay. So I spent the summer not just with the textbook, but I got to know on a personal basis Renee at the local PBS. And what I did is I literally called her and said, Renee, this is what I'm teaching. And what do you have that might remotely go along with that? And Renee loaded me up with all these DVDs and tapes for me to take home. And I spent that summer, and yes, that was a lot of time. I spent that summer watching film after film after film, tossing them, going, that stinks, that one's really good, that one stinks, that one stinks. So when I started class in August, I had all these, and I'm kind of a type A personality. I actually wrote into my textbook, rent this film, at this time, rent this film. And I didn't get a lot of films, I think maybe 5, 6 from the 50, 60 that I watched. I was really all about science that summer. But they're still really good, and how do I know they're still really good? Because this year we have a new science teacher who's still using that same textbook that I wrote all over about, that I wrote, get this film, call Renee, get this film. And she said to me, unsolicited, I might add, just this week, she said, Melissa, I am so thankful for you for writing that stuff down. I rented that film, and the kids loved it. So if you're willing to put in a little time, that's another nice way. So screen time works for the kids. They're using it anyway. So, next. Mix it up. I teach a 50-minute class, and then my students leave, and I get a new batch every 50 minutes. And in that 50 minutes time, I try to include those 4 things in each and every day. If I can't do it in the day, I try to include it throughout the week. I try to make sure I've got a little bit of individual work, partner work, group work, and lecture work. Lecture, as you can see, is way down there. The reason why I divide it is for the fact that students learn in different ways. Some of my students would be very happy if I just stood up here and lectured the entire time. They would, you know who those are, and they'd be very happy. Other kids are very nervous. They need to know they've got a partner, so I partner them up. I do that. I rarely let them choose. And lots, group work, I love group work, and I'm going to show you how I do group work later on. And for me, a group is anywhere from 4 to 6 kids, and I've done as much as that. Again, this is all about empowering my students and teaching them that I'm not the only person who's in charge of this class. While I am in charge of discipline and I choose what we will learn, you are in charge of your education, and you need to take a very participatory part in your education. So I'm totally about that. This is excellent, especially for those students who are highly insecure. In my class, my students know, and I tell this to them from day one, if I call on you and you don't know the answer, please understand that you have a partner and a group to ask for help. That is not cheating. If I called on an adult and they didn't know, they would ask the person next to them or several people in their group. That is called being smart. If I call on you and you don't know the answer, you may use your book, you may use your notes. That is not cheating. That is assisting yourself. How many times do you call on a kid and they just stand there or look at you like a deer in a headlights, or they do that dog thing? You know, and they don't, and you don't get anything and they don't get anything. So I tell my students, you are never alone. Look at all these smart people who are with you. They are your helpers. So when I call somebody up to the board, and I do this on a daily basis, we use the board a lot, it is not unusual to have little Billy come up with Teddy with him. You know, they come up together. They don't ask anymore if they can do that because they know they can. This allows me to call on students who I would never be able to get answers from otherwise, because they don't always know the answer, or they're so insecure they would never raise their hand. So, mix it up. Finally, I use breaks. I use breaks a lot. I have little note cards in each one of my teaching stations. I have 2 teaching stations, one at each end of the room because I like to move around a lot. And each one of them has this little 3x5 card on it that says, take a break, because I have a tendency to forget. So you might want to write yourself a little 3x5 card that says, take a break. I do breaks every 10, 15 minutes. I'm not you know, that's my goal. I'm not wedded to that exact time. Time often gets away from me. For example, I've been teaching now for about a half hour, and this is our first break. So I'm going to show you one of the ways that I take a break with my students is I do something called a rebus. And for those of you that do not know what a rebus is a combination of my network's been found. It's a combination of words and pictures, and it makes a phrase. And this is the one I use to teach my students what a rebus is. You have the word man, you have a line, and you have the word board. And because the word man is listed over the word board, this actually stands for man overboard. Okay. I have one of these on my board most every day. And once the students have done their question of the day, they're allowed to look at that, and they know, because it's on the agenda, that we are going to talk about that rebus. They love these rebuses. So I'm going to show you how I do it with my students. Here is your rebus, and you have 15, 30 seconds to chat with each other about it and see if you know the answer. So begin. Seriously, begin. It's a common phrase. Okay, time. Any guesses? Yes, yes, who said it? Yes. No U-turn. Yeah, no U-turn. Okay. Now, where do I get these? I don't stay up late thinking about rebuses. I have lots of other things I think about late at night. The first time I wanted to look up a rebus, I simply typed in rebus on my search engine and found some. But I do have a very favorite website, and I have included that in the papers that you will be getting later. It's NIEHS. And again, you'll have that later. NIEHS, I forget what it all stands for, but they do a riddle of the day, a rebus of the day, and puzzlers. And I use those all the time. Now, as you saw, all I did was I showed it to you, and I said, I'll give you 15, 30 seconds. This, for my kids, is like gold. And literally, I gave you 15 seconds to talk about it. My students get up, go to each other, chat about it. Okay, they might be talking about Jersey Shores, but I don't think they are. But they chat for 15 seconds. I say time. I ask for answers. And it all takes maybe a minute. So I'm not losing a lot of teaching time. But what have I done? I've done all this. Taking a tiny little break eliminates tension. When you are teaching transitives and intransitives to 7th and 8th graders, believe me, there's tension, because they're like, really? I don't get it. I don't know what you're saying, and that's confusing. Okay. It allows my students to move. I have a lot of students that are ADHD. They must move. They must. I'm allowed to move. Why aren't they? I don't sit at a desk all day. Why should they? Okay. It re-energizes the class. It gets us motivated again. And they're not sitting there going like this, slowly but surely, off into an oblivion. And the thing I really, really love about it is it allows a different set of students to shine. Again, in my one particular class, my one particular 6th grade homeroom, 3/4 of the students have IEPs. I only have 4 or 5 that do not. And I'm not sure why they all got lumped together in the same homeroom, but those 4 or 5 are super bright. So it's like, we're over here and we're over here. And these kids, again, by the time they've gone into 6th grade, they know who to go to, who's a good speller, who's a good reader, who knows their math. And all these kids with the IEPs and these kids that I'm talking about, they don't ever get picked. Nobody ever comes up and says, could you check my math homework? Could you help me spell things? Because they're not good at that. But what I find, and you guys know this to be true, your LD kids, your IEP kids, your Asperger's kids especially, are awesome at thinking outside the box. And so suddenly, these are the kids that everybody's going to. And now they get a chance to shine. And people get to say, aha, you know what, you are smart. Because life is not going to be school. Nobody ever comes up to me, thank God, and says, would you check my multiplication? Because I stunk at that. But I like these puzzles, and they love them too. And like I said, everybody gets a chance to shine. So, add movement. Kids require it, and again, I'm all about eliminating tension. I wasn't kidding when I said high anxiety. I have several students with high anxiety. I have one in particular who's on, Zoloft. She has a tendency in the past, she plucks her eyebrows, her eyelashes, and the hair from her head. She's had bald patches. She takes all the hair off her arms. You'll just see her, she'll be like this, and she's not gnawing on her skin, she's just taking all the hair off her knuckles. I don't see her doing that in my class. Please understand, I am not saying, look at me, aren't I wonderful? I'm telling you that she has let her mom know, and her mom has in turn told me that she's more comfortable in my class because there's these little breaks, and she knows if I call on her, Zoe's not going to be alone. Zoe can ask the person next to her. She can ask her group. And Zoe's a smart cookie. But for some reason, there was a lot of nervousness for her. And to be in 6th grade on high anxiety medication because you pull out all the hairs in your eyebrows and eyelashes just really freaks me out. So if I can do something that will relax my students and relax me, why not? How do I add the movement? Here's some of the ways that I add movement. This is just some. I have a whole list for you, and again, you'll get that list later. Aerobic spelling. I know a lot of you teach spelling. I don't know where I came up with this. This is so awesome. Here's how aerobic spelling goes. You take your list of 10, 15, 20 spelling words, type it out, and after you type it, put 3 to 5 lines underneath each word. Okay, so word, 3, 5 lines, word, 3, 5 lines, word, 3, 5 lines, and make a whole paper that looks like that. Okay? When you're ready to do aerobic spelling, you put one on each student's desks. And then tell the students, pick out your favorite writing utensil. They love that. A lot of the goofballs will say, I'm using a crayon, or I'm using a highlighter. Whatever, we don't care. They stand, they've got their favorite writing utensil, and then the aerobic spelling begins. I will call out a word. They have to lean over and find the word on the list and write it in those little lines, those 5 lines that I wrote. But they can't take their time because this is aerobic spelling. So I'm going to be watching. As soon as I see 1 or 2 heads pop up, they're standing there like, I'm good, I got it done. I'm going to yell, switch! And they have to move to the desk beside them. I will call another word. They find it, they write it, switch! They have to move to another desk. Now, how do I establish this? I tell them, I give them the list, I give them the little map. Marcia, you're going to move to Sally. Sally, you're going to move to Fred. Fred, you're going to follow Billy. I follow that to eliminate tension. And we do this aerobic thing. We do all 20 spelling words. Now, when I grew up, Sister Michael Jude had us write our spelling words anywhere from 5 to 10 times. Why? Because it works. It's a good practice. Kids don't want to do that now. My students will ask. If we are studying spelling and we haven't done aerobic spelling with that unit, they will ask, are we going to play aerobic spelling? What are they asking me for? They're asking me if they can write their spelling words out. So I'm saying. And they're usually quite exhausted at the very end of it, and it's a really cool thing because then I can say, okay, go to your next class. And then the teacher who has them next always says, they came so relaxed and they sat there and they're so good. So aerobic spelling. I use movement as a transition. I do something called DOL, Daily Oral Language. Some of you, I'm sure, probably use that. It's a sentence or two of the day that has grammatical errors on it. It's on the board as soon as my students come in. So some of you that teach math probably have a problem of the day. And they come in, it starts the day, and there it is. They get it done. And so they sit down and immediately get started. My students know that as soon as you complete that assignment, you need to stand. This is a visual for me. I can look around and say, okay, 3/4 of the kids are standing, most everybody's done, I can move on. I do this with most every written assignment I give my students. I'll say, stand when you are done. Okay? Again, they're getting up, the blood does leave their little tushies, so they get an opportunity to stand. I have a very easy visual. I'm not having to look to see who's finished. Act out vocabulary. I cannot begin to tell you why this works because I don't know the science behind it. I just can tell you that this totally works, especially with my IEP kids. They love it. I did this yesterday with my 7th graders. What I do is when you have vocabulary, geography words, to literary terms, to just basic vocabulary, you divide them up into partners. You give each partner a word with the definition, and then you give them a certain amount of time, usually 1 to 2 minutes, not very long. I say go, and the students have that 1 to 2 minutes to come up with an action that explains that word. They cannot use props. They cannot speak. It's strictly an action. My students, when everybody's done, they get an opportunity to share. I go to Billy and his partner. I say, Billy, what's your word? Interminable was one of the words. Show us interminable. This is what they did for interminable. Because it goes on forever, right? Interminable means long time. They did that. All right, the class, I say, okay, class, your turn. Interminable. Everybody does it. This works. Last year, I had an incredibly tactile learner. And I am not lying. He was this big, lumbering kid, huge kid. He would sit there during my vocabulary tests, and you could see him doing this. That's what he was doing. It works for him. Now, a lot of the kids are just going to memorize the words anyway, but for many of them, this is an excellent tool, and it gets us up and out. I have done this outside when the weather's beautiful. I've done this in my classroom. It doesn't matter. Are we learning? Yeah. Okay. Beanbag toss. I made a couple bean bags several years ago. I use them for a variety of things. One of the simplest ways that I use it is something called, I would say, my own version of hot potato. Hot potato is, for those of you that don't remember, you get the group stand in a circle or an oval, and you have them give the bean bag, the hot potato, to the person who is next to them. Now remember, I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, so I make sure that they literally are handing it to each other. There's no whipping it in their heads or on their chest or, throwing it under, whatever. And the rule is, as I'm playing the music, they're just passing it off, handing it off, handing it off. When the music stops, whoever has the hot potato has to answer my question. Now, if, is it Cindy? Cindy and I, if I have it and I'm starting to pass it to Cindy and we both have our hands on it, I had it longest, I get to answer the question. Okay. Where do I get my questions from? I get them from the end of the chapter when I was teaching science, or those review questions, vocabulary terms, geography terms, mathematical equations, spelling, whatever it is that you are studying. If they get the question wrong, I don't have them leave the circle, because that would be dumb, because they'd be over there doing nothing and causing trouble. So they stay in the circle. And I just say, class, and whoever knows the answer en masse, they say, interminable, whatever the answer is. Beanbag toss. Fun thing. I used beanbags last week, 2 weeks ago, to teach prepositions to my 6th graders. I don't know where that came from either, but it worked very successfully. My 6th graders were having this massive, I don't know, what do you call it, like a brain fart. They just couldn't get prepositional phrases, no matter what I said. So I gave each one of them a chance to take a beanbag and toss it anywhere in the classroom they wanted, as long as it didn't, wing somebody in the face. After they tossed it, they had to use a prepositional phrase to explain where it went. Over my head, under Cindy's desk, at Marcia's feet, on Billy's desk. Suddenly, everybody understood prepositions. Okay. Music stop review. This is easy peasy. I play some music. They move around. Or my 6th graders like to do that Barney as they walk around. I don't know. Anyway, I play music, they move around, they have a good time, and when I stop the music, they need to find a partner very quickly. They find a new partner, hopefully each and every time, and the partner, she and her partner, or he and his partner, wait for me, the teacher, to give them a question. I give a question, again, into the chapter, or vocabulary terms, whatever it is we're studying. They confer, they come up with an answer. When they think they have an answer, they give me a visual. They give me a V for victory. Or if they're looking at each other going, dude, do you know that? I don't know that. I don't know what she's talking about. Then give me an I give up. And it gives me a real quick visual as to how many know it. And then I just call on a pair. What's the answer? Good. Or if they get it wrong, class. Interminable. Okay, good. And then I play more music. Do they talk as they're moving around with the music? Yeah. Do I care? No. They're having fun. I'm having fun. How long do I do this? Maybe one song. Or maybe 5 questions. And on days where I really feel like they need that extra moment, I might include amongst all my questions, I might say, for the next question, it might be something like, talk to your partner about what you're going to wear tonight for Halloween. They're going to do it anyway, so I've instructed them to do it. Now I'm in charge. Okay? Fly swatter. This is new to me this year. I'm loving this. I went out and got clean fly swatters. I have old, gunky, nasty fly swatter guts, ones, but I bought new ones because I love my students. And you use this when you're trying to teach terms of any kind. And you place the words on the board. I don't use my smartboard for this. I just actually use my blackboard and my whiteboard. You write the words on the board. And I have them do this in groups. So I have 2 of them facing against the board, with each one with a brand new fly swatter. And there's 2 people in front of them with the terms and the definitions. And all they do is, the people with the definitions will say, I'm looking for a word that means land with water on 3 sides. Go. And they have to turn around and they have to look for peninsula. And the first person who finds it and swats it, gets their fly swatter on it first, wins. Okay? It's very visual. It's very up and moving. They're still learning. So, probably the simplest way I use movement is simply to allow them to sit on the floor when doing seat work. This sounds so little, and it truly, truly is. I understand that some teachers simply can't go there. I get that. But at the very beginning of the school year, I tell my students, whenever I give you something to do, when I say go, understand you may work at your desk, you may work on the floor, you may sit in the corner on the rug, you may sit on your head in the corner. I don't care, as long as you get the work done. Now, the first time I say this, and I say this a lot within the first couple weeks, you know, to remind them this is the routine. First time I say this, everybody's like, they all get up like, we get to walk, I don't know where to go. And most of them actually wind up going back to their seats because it's like, I have no idea where to go. Nobody's ever told me I could do that. I'm confused. Here it is January by now. Those that are going to use it are using it. Yesterday I gave a little seat work, I think it was my 8th grade. And I had, out of my 32 students, I had, I think, 6 get up. I have this one little girl, no lie, she loves to sit on the floor and use her chair as a desk. Don't know why. I don't care, because you know what? She's still getting the work done. She's not hurting anybody. And I have one little boy that also uses that time as an opportunity just to get up and walk. He needs to do that every couple minutes. So again, this is the simplest, and if you have a comfort zone that will allow you to say this to the students, I highly recommend it. They think they're getting away with murder. They're like, oh my gosh, the freedom. And you're doing so little, but you're making so many of them happy. It's a little thing. It really, really, really is a little thing. Okay. We're going to take a Tai Chi break. Indulge me. Stand. Push in your chairs. Make sure that you are arm's length away from everybody. My students promised me that I would teach this to you. This is my 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. Please understand that thought this was awesome. They said, you must teach this. I said, I will, I promise. Okay, here's my little spiel. I do have to introduce this to the students, so it takes a little longer to introduce it. So indulge me on this. And then you'll see, once I show you how to do Tai Chi, you'll see that it takes very little time. It's just introducing. Tai Chi, what I know about Tai Chi could fit in like a thimble. But what I do know is Chi means energy. And Tai Chi has to do with manipulating energy. Tai Chi is slow movements. And Tai Chi is about breathing out. And as you exhale, you're supposed to be you're supposed to be expelling all the negative energy and the negative thoughts that have gone, that are in your head. And when you inhale, you're supposed to be inhaling good energy and good thoughts. So I tell the students, every time you exhale, think about, you know, the argument I had with mom, or maybe I didn't do so well in math, or you know, I got my feet wet in the puddle, and let go of it. You're actually pushing away when you expel. So let me show you one of the movements. We're going to practice it a little bit. Take your hands and have the palms facing out. And your feet are about shoulder length apart. Take your left leg and move it up just ever so slightly. And I want you to push out, and you're going to rock forward on the ball of your foot. So push out and go like this. Okay, now take your hands and scoop them this way. And you're going to breathe in, and you're going to rock back on the ball of your back foot. Okay. Push out, breathe out, breathe in. Okay, you have half of Tai Chi. Now we're going to do that on the other side. So take your right leg, or whichever one you didn't use, and push it up a little bit. We've got our hands pushing out. We're going to breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. And again, every time you breathe in, you should be thinking, yeah, I can get through the day. Heck, it's Friday. It's, you know, I got a weekend going on, you know, whatever. Think good stuff, think bad stuff. Bad stuff, push away. Good stuff, bring in. Okay. How do I teach Tai Chi? I do the watermelon story. And you too will learn the watermelon story. So the watermelon story starts in prayer pose. This is prayer pose. My feet are comfortably about shoulder length apart. I'm going to do it. This will be kind of like a do as I do song, so I'm going to do the story first so you can watch. You can just stand there and relax a little bit. And then we're going to do it together. Okay. So, the watermelon story. I had a big watermelon. I cut it in half. I took half to one neighbor, but she wasn't home. I took half to the other neighbor, but she wasn't home. So I ate the whole thing myself. Tai Chi. So let's do the watermelon story. Ready? And you may say it with me if you would like. I had a big watermelon. I cut it in half. I cut it in half. I took half to one neighbor. I took half to one neighbor, but she wasn't home. But she wasn't home. That other neighbor. I took half to the other neighbor, but she wasn't home. So I ate the whole thing myself. So I ate the whole thing myself. And of course you bow. Okay, please be seated. Okay. Now, I have done the watermelon story with as low as first graders. Because about 4 years ago, I was art on a cart. Somebody came up with that. When I'm not teaching English, we want you to do art on a cart. So I was like, sure, I can do that. So I did all these movements and breaks with the little kids as well as the junior high. Tai Chi, that watermelon story, typically on my agenda, if it says Tai Chi, I hear as the kids walk in, yes! How often do I do it? A couple times a month. How long does it take? We usually do it twice. We do the story. Everybody wants to tell the story. And then we do it silently. And as we're doing it silently, we're focused on breath. I do remind them, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in. A good time to do this? After a test. After notes. Okay. Next thing, worksheets 2012. I use them, you use them. But let me tell you some of the ways that I use them, because I might tweak it just a bit differently. About 5-10 years ago, I discovered these plastic liner sleeves. You use them to protect your written word. You can get them at Walmart, Kmart, all the other places. Do you know what I mean when I say plastic liner sleeves? Okay. I bought a whole mess of them for my class. And I got some Expo pens too. Our students now actually are required to have an Expo pen with them, which like most of them don't, so I still have a big bag of Expo pens. So what I do is, from time to time, when we are studying something in the textbook, I'll just pass out the liner notes, those plastic liner sleeves, and have them place it directly on the textbook page. Here's several examples. When I was teaching science and we were doing renewable and non-renewable energy, there was this long expanse on listing a lot of renewable energies and a lot of non-renewable energies. And we'd read it, but I wasn't real sure that they were getting it. They were supposed to read it for homework. So I said, take your plastic liner sleeves, put it on page 48, take your Expo, and I'd like you to highlight. You have 30-60 seconds. I usually time it. You have 30-60 seconds. I want you to find and highlight all the renewable energy sources that are listed on that page. Begin. Everybody's working because it's something different. I have a really easy visual. If Cindy's way at the top of the page, and I know the renewable energies are way down at the bottom, I can go up to Cindy very quickly and redirect her. You might want to look down here. If Billy's over there drawing little circles, I know those aren't renewable energy. So again, I know who's focused and I know who's not, and it works very nicely. How have I used it in reading? Place it on a paragraph that we're studying. I would like you to highlight the topic sentence, or find a word in there that means long time. It's one of your vocab words. I want you to find it. Highlight interminable. When we were studying geography, locate the area where the Civil War first took place, or where is the plateau? Circle the plateau. A friend of mine actually does a riff on this, because we got to talking about this, and what she does with it, now she teaches high school, is she will have them use multiple colors, and it's use this color to find the pros that back up the topic sentence, use this colors for the cons, that when she's doing a persuasive article. So you're only limited by your imagination. So Expo pens are awesome for that. Other times, I simply use it for what it was meant to be. I will pass out the worksheet, and I don't know about your school, but my school, we're in a paper crunch too, and we can't afford a whole lot, and here's your paper allotment, and please don't go over it, and blah, 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 blah. So what I do is I make a certain amount of worksheets, and instead of giving them out to all my classes, I just reuse them and say, put it in the plastic liner, and they follow the directions. If the directions say, circle the transitive verb, or find, is it answer A, B, C, or D? They're circling it with their expo. Then they clean it off. No harm, no foul. I still got a brand new worksheet. That's great. That I may want to reuse a week or two later. I'll go, we already did that. I know. Let's make sure you really know it. Okay. So anyway, expos, plastic liner sleeves. Cut strips and categorize. What I do with that is, what I simply mean is, I take those worksheets that ask you to categorize. Find the simple, compound, complex sentences. Find the renewable, non-renewable sources of energy. All those types of worksheets, and there's a lot of them. I make a couple copies. I cut them into strips. I put all those strips in envelopes. I give them to each pair, and I say pair them up. In this envelope, I have 20 sentences. They're either fragments, simple, or compound. You put them in those three categories. You have 2 minutes. You have 4 minutes, whatever. And they work furiously at it. They have more fun. I do a lot of board work. I use my smart board every day. I have my kids write on the smart board. I write on the smart board, but I use the plain chalk one and the one for the expos. Have the students come up and write on the boards all the time. They love to do that. 2 days ago, right before my test, I said to the one class, I was really on time that day, and I had like 4 minutes to spare. So I said, we got 4 minutes left with the class. You may study spelling, however you choose. And it was a beautiful thing, because what happened with those students is I had several that stayed at their desks or went into corners and did what I call study buddy. I ask Cindy the questions, she asks me the questions, I spell it for Cindy, she spells it for me. I had half a dozen of them go up to the board. Some of them played hangman with the words. Some of them just wrote the words out. I had 2 little girls, they're crazy about those plastic liners. They grabbed the plastic liners and they were writing the words on the plastic liners. And I had maybe 3 that chose to sit at their desk. I know these guys thrive on individual work, and they simply would do this. They were doing this, and they were memorizing by themselves. 4 minutes. What did I do? Not a darn thing. I walked around. Looked like I was busy. I wasn't. They were teaching each other. Again, all about empowering my students. Okay, group to group work. I use this a lot. And I have a friend who calls it pass the trash. So you may have heard it called pass the trash. I'm not crazy about that term because that to me means that my students' work is garbage. But, you know, she teaches high school and she says they like pass the trash. Pass the trash or group to group work simply means you give them an assignment. For example, this would be like a group of 4. You're all by yourself, but I would add somebody too. And I give each group an assignment and a very finite amount of time. You have 30 seconds, you have a minute, you have 2 minutes to, the way I used pass the trash this past week was I said, everybody write 5 nouns on your paper. You have 30 seconds to do that. Write 5 nouns. Okay, now pass it to the next group. Next group, I want you to add an adjective to that, and I want you to come up with basically a subject, a complete subject. You know, bird, the pretty little bird. Now we've got a subject. Right? Next, pass it on. Add an action verb, just an action verb. And finally, you can see where I was going with it. I hope they didn't until I got there. The 4th group, okay, take that verb, expand on it, make it into a complete predicate. Now you've made a sentence. Do you see how we can make a sentence? Okay. And they always get a blast out of it, and they're always trying to trick each other, coming up with goofy sentences and very strange verbs. I could have them sit at their desk and just say, write 5 sentences with a complete subject and a complete predicate. They're still doing that. They're just getting to see what you... Oh, Timmy, you wrote puke. Oh, well, we're going to write puked his guts out. Okay. I don't care. They know how to do it now. Okay. So, again, empowering my students. They think they're getting away with something. I know they're not. I'm teaching. So, worksheets. Finally, students as educators. Again, I'm all about empowering my students, and these are some of the ways that I do it. But first, I really want to talk about, very quickly, something that is not on this, but is something I do. When we have these super bright people, have you ever noticed how with our honors students and our super bright people, we give them more work to do? And we say to the students, you're not, and then we say to the other students, you didn't do really well, you're not real smart, you don't have as much. We give them half the page, or we give them 2 of the sentences to do instead of 10. You know, we're always kind of watering down. And I'm okay with that to that extent. But here's where I differ. And my students learn this very quickly. If I give an assignment and a student does not do well on that assignment, for a variety of reasons, I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th. They often rush through things. Maybe they just rush through it. You know, I'm going to make, it's a multiple choice. I'm going to make a really pretty design. A, D, A, D, A, D, B, B. Just because that way they don't get that demerit, because we give demerits for missing homework. They're not going to get in trouble. Ha-ha. There it is. Okay. Ha-ha is my comment, because here's what I do. If you fail one of my assignments in class or for homework, guess what? Guess what? You get to do it again. Because I see no teaching or learning value in saying, Billy, you got an F, as in you got a 0. You didn't get anything right. But I'll just record that in my book. We're done. Yes, this takes a little bit more time on my part. But what I tell the students and how I approach the students is I say, you know, I could give you the 0, but you're not going to learn from that, and it's not going to teach you anything. So here's the deal. I'm available at lunchtime today, or I'm available after school, and you know, you've got your notes, you've got your textbook. I want you to look this over, and I want you to try again, and I expect that tomorrow. If I do not receive that tomorrow, I will assume you want a homework missing. You know, because we do, like I said, we write demerits for that sort of thing. And, you know, and I'll make you do it anyway. I'll have you come in for lunch and complete it then. So you will complete this tomorrow. If tomorrow you receive 100, awesome. What I'm going to do is I'll take both those grades, I'll combine them, 0 plus 100, and I'll divide it by 2. And that's the grade you're going to get. They're excited because they're getting a second opportunity. And for some of them, they need that second opportunity. Yeah, it's not that great a deal, you know. I mean, a 0 or a 50. But they've learned, and isn't that what they're supposed to be doing? Have I had students who have had to have done it 3 and 4 times? Yes. I had one parent say to me early on, I know I told you to this. Early on when I did this, I had this one parent that sent me this in all capitals, and it was like 24 font. It was big. She said, "This allowing Brian to repeat all his work. What is this teaching him? He always gets second chances? I don't think so. This will stop." So I responded, "Thank you for your email." I really did. And I explained my concept. I said, because she went on to say that what it's teaching Brian is he doesn't have to take his time, and if he wants to, you know, blow it off that night, it's okay because he gets to do it again the next day. And what I told her is, if Brian really is blowing this off, it is a poor choice. Because the following night, when the rest of my students do not have homework, Brian has homework again. And if he doesn't get that one right, he gets it again. So truly, it's a very poor choice on Brian's part. And I also went about how that Brian can learn from his mistakes and, you know, all the science that we've already been taught. This mother is my biggest fan now. She went to the intervention specialist because Brian has an IEP. I love her, and she came back with this, "I had a bad day, and I don't know why I emailed you," and this was really small font, and she used that little hand one, you know, that's really pretty. "And you're just so wonderful, and Brian did learn a lot, and he now knows," and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. First time I tell the students this, it's usually August and September when a whole mess of them blow off the homework because they had football practice or whatever. And a whole mess of them get to do it. And I'm always very respectful. I never give it back to them and say, "You were such a moron and I can't believe you did poorly here." I just say, "I'm going to give you an opportunity to do it. And if you need more help, come see me. You're not alone." Blah, blah. I give them my big spiel. Everybody does it. Here it is January. I rarely do this. I rarely do this because my students don't want to redo their homework. So they do take the time. And as I said, I will have people like Nathaniel that'll come up and say, "I'm not sure about this homework. Can you talk to me?" They come see me. They're being proactive. I've empowered my students. They're saying, "Where can I get more information? Could I go to Quia? Could I go to Chomp Chomp? Do you have another worksheet? Could we maybe work together?" Because there's none of that, "I don't care, here's my homework," because it's going to be, "Oh, here it is again." Okay, so anyway, so I empower my students, and that's what this is about as students, as educators. The rest of this are simply different ways that I do that. Quiz groups and group worksheets are something I do in my groups. I do this with all my students. I do group my students up, high, low, intermediate. I try to. And I've done this with every subject that I've ever taught, from geography to science to English and so on. I will say, "Here's your quiz," something either that I set up, or maybe those pesky into the chapter, into the unit questions, and I will simply say, "Learn the answers to that. Please do not write those down. Learn the answers to that. When your group is ready, please stand, and I will come over and orally quiz you." And what I do is I very clearly state to them, "You're a team. You need to be in charge. If I'm part of your group and all I want to do is talk about the football game last night and how my team lost and that's not fair, you need to yank me back in." And when I come to the group, I will ask each person a question. Now, remember, I told you I've got some high anxiety kids, so I do allow them to use their partner. I do not want Zoe pulling any of her eyebrows out or eyelashes out because I've made her nervous. So I will ask the group a question, but it cannot just be, is it Katie?
Yes.
It cannot just be Katie answering. "Katie, that was a good answer. Okay, now let's ask Barb. Barb, here's your question. Now let's ask Cindy. Okay, now here's a group question." Okay? And I let them know, if somebody gets a wrong answer, They can ask the group members for assistance. Okay, that's one way to eliminate the anxiety. But also, if they get it wrong, it's the group. We sink or swim as a group. So group quizzes, do I take the grades? You betcha. Absolutely. Okay, group worksheets. Love these. Okay, I want everybody to answer the questions. Give everybody a worksheet. This is your practice test. This is your homework, whatever. Everybody writes on the worksheet. Then I tell them, everybody better be writing. There's always that Mikey or that Billy or that Sally that doesn't want to write. No, everybody needs to write because they know when I call time, I'm going to go up and I'm going to say, okay, thank you. I'm going to take her paper or I'm going to take Katie's paper. And and whatever they wrote is going to be the grade for the entire group. It's a little bit of pressure, but it keeps them focused. And for so many of my kids, they need that extra pressure. Last week when I was doing it, it's so adorable because these girls kept saying to Mikey, Mikey, we're going to rein you in. You know, and every once in a while he'd say, so, but I was thinking, they'd say, Mikey, did you write that down? You better write that down. I'm not going down because of you, Mikey, they'd say. And Mikey got the stuff. Mikey got focused. And if you don't want to just grab any particular paper, if you don't want it to look like you're picking one, I have a little spinner. I have my students count off 1 to 4, and I'll spin. Okay, I'm taking number 4. Oh, okay, I'm taking number 3. So, group worksheets. Silly sentences. We all learned them when we were kids. Every good boy deserves fudge or favor. You know, I mean, there's a lot of them out there. Homes to learn the Great Lakes. Huron, you know. They're really cool things. And years ago, I thought to myself, you know, there aren't enough of those. And I was bemoaning the fact that my students did not know the 8 parts of speech. I said, you know, we need a silly sentence for that. I said, you got 3 minutes to come up with one. And they did. And I'm still using it. And I will share it with you. Because I didn't do it. Never verbally assault ants in poorly constructed prisons. Never stands for the noun, verb for verbally, assault for, you get the idea. All right. Let the students be in charge. If you've got a list they have to memorize, from geography to religion, let them come up with a silly sentence. You will be amazed. You will be amazed. Peer editing. A lot of it's English, but it can also be math. You're simply pairing them up and letting them help each other. 6 question cards. I use this. Used it a lot when I taught science. I did 3x5 cards, and each 3x5 card has one of the 6 questions. Who, what, where, when, why, how. I laminated them, like I had the time. And each child is given one of those question cards.